All right. Hi, everybody. It's Claude. Um, just felt with everything that's been going on online here in my little community that I should probably put a little something together to talk about free speech because obviously not a lot of people fully understand that or have really taken the time to think about that. Okay. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, we live in Canada, we have free speech, there's nothing to worry about and all that. But lots of things have been happening lately as far as preventing free speech. There's social media platforms that weren't there 20 years ago, and that's putting back in question how we operate about the principles of free speech within that context and what it means. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a few things. Now, my approach is purely a moral approach. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you what is legal, what is illegal. Obviously, these social media platforms are private businesses. They first came on the scene portraying themselves as being neutral and basically a platform for speech, a bit like your telephone service would be. You don't get your telephone service being cut off because somebody at Telus or Bell doesn't like what you're saying on their telephone, right? So that's kind of what was the premise with these platforms, at least originally, YouTube, Facebook, and the rest of them. Now it seems like that's been turned around, and I know there's some legal debates about that, but notwithstanding the legal debates, I'm just going to talk about free speech and the morality of free speech. Okay. Now, we know that in dictatorships, free speech is one of the first thing that is squelched, because what dictatorships like to do is like they like to propagandize and indoctrinate their populations to make them easier to control. Okay, so if people are feel like they can speak freely, then it makes it very hard for people to control them, because there's always somebody kind of questioning why we're doing this, why we're doing that, and where the information might be coming from, and if policy and science is actually lining up. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so free speech. Why should we have free speech? Okay, two main reasons. We all need it. Okay, in order to be able to think, you have to be able to speak and express yourself. That's how thoughts are made. This isn't from me. I actually took that from Jordan Peterson video that I thought was brilliant. Okay, if you're not able to think and to speak freely, then you're not able to come to any kind of truth and be able to take direction in your life. So we all need to be free to think and speak to some extent, right? Also, I would extend that and say we all benefit from others also having free speech, because if you prevent other people's thoughts and words and speech, then you're interfering with the benefits that may come from that, and that might be spread through society. Uh, Also, if we don't like what somebody's saying and we prevent them from saying it, well, think of a young child who can't express himself and who's going through some kind of stressful event. Well, if they can't use their words, they're going to lash out. So when you start to suppress people and keep them from expressing and discussing things that are important to them, about stuff that they might be stressed about and that they need to sort out, you pretty much force them to lash out, or you force the whole thing to go underground, and then you don't know what's going on. It's not out in the open. So we all benefit from everyone uh, being able to have a platform and a stage to be able to express themselves. Now, are there exceptions to free speech? Yes, there are. Okay. Now, these exceptions might not be what you would like them to be or what you would think that they are. Okay. I had one comment on social media is, well, and the comment said that free speech is fine and dandy. I'm paraphrasing here. But this is healthcare we're talking about, and it's fine so long, but not when people are being dangerous. Now, I'm not quite sure what the person meant by people are being dangerous. I can interpret that one of two ways. Either these people scare me, okay, not so much that it's not clear that they're being dangerous by speaking with each other. But I think the person was scared about either what they were saying or what it may cause other people to do or to agree to, if they should hear them say it. Okay, so the first part, if somebody's saying stuff that scares you, you don't have to shut them down. You can move away. People are screaming it in your face. They're, especially here with social media, we're talking about a closed group. You don't have to be a member of that group if the things that are being discussed scare you. By all means, nobody needs to be scared. And if it's an individual like myself, I know a lot of people sometimes don't like what I say, and I've been blocked by people. That's totally fine. I don't want to be, talking to somebody who doesn't want to hear me. That's perfectly fine with me, and you're certainly entitled to do that. Now, if people are going to take action to try to shut me down, so other people that may be interested about what I have to say can't hear me, that's a problem. Okay, but that is not an exception to free speech. That is valid. That's morally valid. Okay, now the second thing is, if those people are being dangerous, means I'm afraid of what might result from their discussion. Okay, that's not valid either. Okay, people are allowed to discuss, and this goes with the assumption that you hold the truth and that they don't. Okay, now the whole point of debate is for both parties to come out winning by exposing what they have to say and what they're thinking, and countering each other in such a way that you can both get closer to the truth. That's the whole point of debating. There's nothing wrong with debating. The term argument takes some backlash sometimes because it's, for some reason in today's society, argument is seen as something that's bad. Okay. Uh, some of the best arguments I've had were with people that I love and that I cherish. And those are the people it's important to debate with, because you both want to get closer to the truth. And sometimes you might not get there, but if you don't expose your thoughts and your ideas and allow somebody to counter them with their thoughts and their ideas, then you can't move forward. And so blocking free speech is a real hindrance to discovering truth. Okay, and I've had many opinions, and I've modified my opinions from debates I've had and discussions, and discovering that other people might not think the way I do. Now, I've had a lot of discussions, and I'm not one to necessarily back away just because I'm intimidated at the prospect that I might be ostracized or blocked, or somebody might not like me. Luckily, I don't have that problem that some people have, that they need to be agreeable with everybody. I'm notoriously disagreeable in that sense. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. In fact, I have a lot of empathy and compassion for people. I really do care about people, and I think it's important that people find the truth and sort out their lives and deal with, you know some of the dreadful events that happen in everyday life. So um, it's important that if somebody is being disagreeable, as in they're disagreeing with your point of view, it's not because they hate you. Okay, and yes, debates sometimes get heated, and sometimes you say things that you might regret, and that's fine to go back and say, listen, might have gone too far there. I apologize. I'd want to retract that. Let's move on. Okay. Now let's look at some of the exceptions that are valid exceptions of free speech. Okay. The first one has to do with fraud. Okay. And it's one of the really good examples that I've seen used while discussing free speech as far as fraud is concerned. If you're, say, in a big movie theater, and all of a sudden, to I don't know, to joke around or to cause a ruckus, you decide to stand up and start yelling, fire, fire. Okay. And you cause a commotion. Well, that's not valid free speech. Okay. First of all, I'm not saying that, if you saw that there was actually a fire and you want to warn people, obviously that's not a problem. That's totally valid. But if you're doing this knowing quite well that there is no fire and you decide to make a fraudulent claim or to lie, then that's not part of what's acceptable in free speech, at least not morally. Okay. Um, I'll include in that mimicking, for example. And what I mean by that is, you want to pass a certain point or of view online, and you don't have a good source for it, so you decide to, I don't know, go to the CBC website or BBC or whatever source, CNN, that your uh, person that you're wanting to bring the information to, will respect as a source, whatever it might be, and you compose a fake um, news page, for example, and that claims to be a CNN page, and you make a screenshot of that, and you're like, oh, look, this and that happened, and it's on the news. Okay, well, that's fraudulent, obviously. Okay, that didn't really happen. It was never part of that source, so that is obviously not acceptable within the scope of free speech. Okay, so anything you do try to claim that's knowingly false, okay, you don't believe it to be true, but you want to pass it on, it's fraudulent, it's lying, and it's morally wrong, no matter who does it here. Okay. The next one is incitement to violence. Okay. Um, you can have your point of view. Once you cross the line and start to say, hey, I don't know, we should gang up and go beat these guys up, or let's go grab those people and make them disappear, or let's all get together and deplatform this group because we don't like what they're talking about. Okay, somebody might recognize themselves in that. This is incitement to violence. You're bullying, and whether it's happening online or it's happening in real life doesn't matter. The principle remains the same. If you're going to live a principled life, and trust me, living a principled life makes things a lot easier. I really recommend that you consider identify life principles that you can live with, and then you can use those principles and adapt them to specific situations in your life. And this is one of them. Okay, so incitement of violence, ganging up on people, and it's really the call of the weak and desperate to do that. And it leads to stuff like online bullying, and it's not covered in free speech. Okay, you're not allowed to incite to violence. It's the initiation of force. So for those of you who have ever listened to any talk on the libertarian movement, there's very simple principles to go by, and the non initiation of force towards another. You're quite allowed to defend yourself, but not initiate force. And this opens up a small gray spot. We have a certain class of people that constantly sees themselves as a victim. And one of the reasons people do that is that once you've identified yourself as a perpetual victim, then you can justify initiating force towards other. Okay, I'm the victim here, so let's go punch this guy because we're the victim. Okay, this is wrong, and it's not awfully productive to visualize yourself and conceptualize yourself as a victim through your life. So I certainly don't recommend doing that, and it certainly does not, in fact, justify the initiation of force or an incitement to violence. The third one and the final I found, once again, if you find others that you want to discuss, put it in the comments below. And I will have this on my YouTube as well. So if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. So the third one is defamation. Okay, now you're passing information if you want, but your aim isn't to inform people. It's not something that is how do I say, graceful, for lack of another words. Your aim in defamation is to be punitive towards somebody. Okay, once again, so this is the initiation of force towards somebody. You want to destroy somebody's reputation, attack their reputation. Okay, and that's not okay. If you start to claim that, you know, so and so's probably a pedophile and he's this and that and he tortures animals or whatever you want to come up with here, um, and you have no right to claim that, you've got no proof, you just hate the person and you want to soil his reputation online, then you've extended outside the limits of free speech. So those are really the three main ones. Now we're going to touch on something really quick here that tends to come up, and it has to do a little bit with number one here, the fraud part. So say for example, example one, okay, so somebody does make a false claim, puts together this false news brief about this event that happened. Okay, now they're willingly fraudulent, but it goes out and it circulates and it gets viral and it comes across and you read it and you're like, oh really, I got to pass this on, this is like big news, and you pass it on. So what's your responsibility there? Okay, and my take on that, and once again you can write in the comments and tell me what you think, but I think checking sources is mutual responsibility of the person taking, passing on the information, and the person receiving it. And obviously the person who's passing it on was at one time the person receiving it as well. um, and as people going and doing stuff online, we don't always have the time to do, full check of the news and the links. And sometimes, you'll have like a news brief of a certain this study came out and revealed that and this. Okay, and you don't always have the time to trace back the white paper and go through the entire data. Okay, so you make a judgment call sometimes, and you look at it, you're like, okay, this makes sense to me in the context of what I already know, and I think it's worth passing on. I think it serves other people. It's not malicious to pass it on, even though some people might disagree with it. um, I mean, that's valid. And I want to bring the other point here is that a lot of there's a certain hierarchy of responsibility when you do that. Okay, and it has to do with your scope of practice. Okay, so if you're, for example, presenting yourself online as a medical doctor or a virologist, and you want to push a certain narrative, whatever it may be, whether it's the mainstream narrative or a counter narrative, and you present yourself, okay, I'm so and so and I've got a PhD and I'm a virologist and I've been working in the field for 30 years, yada yada yada, then you have a very high degree of responsibility to check your sources and to make sure what you're saying is true, because you're presenting yourself as being a total expert. And so people will measure that in the consideration of what you're going to say. Um, Now, if you don't have any credentials and you're like, well, I think this is, such and such a study is right. Well, you have a lesser degree of responsibility because, one, I don't think it's realistic to expect a non-credential person to make as good an analysis of whatever it is he's passing on than somebody who's a professional in that field. And that should be taken into consideration by the person receiving. Who's sending me this? What's their credentials? It doesn't mean that because their credentials are not as high that they're necessarily not presenting the truth, obviously, but it's more a case of how much responsibility do they have and what the expectations should be. Okay, so I'd like you to consider those things. Hopefully that has been useful to you. If you have any comments, suggestions, whatever, put them in the comment below, in the comments below. And thank you very much for listening. I hope this helps. And honestly, I hope this will bring some kind of unity where people in different groups with different opinions, or within the same group with different opinions, can actually respect where they're at and understand that it's important that we don't deplatform, that we keep the debate going. Okay. And if whatever's being talked about scares you too much, you have an option to not be there. Scroll on. There's a really ingenious little thing here. It's on your mouse. It's a little wheel. If you keep scrolling it, you don't have to see what scares you. Okay. So, same on the phone. You can keep scrolling. You don't have to intervene. If you get in there and you want to present, well, don't take it the wrong way if people have a different point of view and state their disagreement with what you just said. You got in the ring. Okay. You can't get in the ring and say, well, I'm just going to punch you a little bit, but you don't have any right to strike back. I mean, that's not how it works in the ring, right? You want to get into a debate ring, well, you got to be able to receive information and give it, and that's how it is. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not ready to do that. Nobody's forcing you in there. It's completely voluntary, and your choice. And honest to God, I've had a lot of disagreements, and I bear absolutely no hard feelings with people who disagree with me. Okay. I cherish people who disagree with me because it forces me to get more precise, and it flexes those debate muscles, and it gets me closer to the truth. And that's really, really important. Okay. And I hope that you value that as well. Okay. I don't have a whole lot of high regard for people who deplatform and try to prevent other people from exercising their free speech rights, though. And a call out to people who did that. Uh, we all make mistakes. We all get carried away. I know in the past I have as well. I suggest that you ponder that, you retract what you said, and you make a formal apology. We're a very small community here. We're going to run into each other. There's no reason to be that aggressive in your intervention. None whatsoever. We're all trying to find our own way to cope with the things that are going on right now, and blocking people from speaking. First of all, it doesn't work. We already, when things were happening, this is a funny thing, because it started in the States and they deplatformed Donald Trump. I personally don't have any love for politicians one way or the other, but I thought that was kind of special, never seen before, these platforms deplatforming a president. And and, and so a lot of people started getting deplatformed off Twitter after that, and they obviously had moved to Parler. They were doing both platforms. I was on Parler as well, and so for a long time they were saying, well, these are private companies; they're allowed to do what they want. If you don't like the way they manage things, just start your own or move to another platform. Well, fine. That's basically what a lot of people did, and then that platform got attacked, and then you know from people who weren't even on that platform. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't tell people, if you this is private, if you don't like it, start your own group. And then when they do start their own group, then you go attack that group. Okay, sooner or later, that's gonna blow up in your face. And it comes back to what I was saying before. If you have somebody, take the example of a small child who's not able to express himself, then the reaction is to lash out. If you don't want that child to lash out, you teach him to express themselves and use their words. Okay. Well, don't prevent people from using their words. That's a very positive thing, even if you don't like those words. Okay. And it's very sad that this was done by a teacher, because when I was a student, I have a lot of um, I could probably say a lot of negative things from my experience as a student, but one of the things I do remember is that they claim, that they may not, the idea of free speech, where and I don't know where the quote's from. If you know, just put it down in the comments there. You can help me out here. I don't have time to look it up on the spot, but the idea that I may not like what you say, but I'll fight to the tooth and nail for you to be able to say it. And that was the going, and that was the liberal way of dealing, and the liberal view of free speech, that it was super important for everybody to have it. And nowadays it's like, if I don't like what you say, I'm going to deplatform you, I'm going to shut you up, and I'll make you disappear. um yeah, that's a pretty big fall from grace there. So I hope that we can bounce off that, and I hope it's been useful, and we've got a light at the end of the tunnel where people are going to consider that and improve our debates online and allow each person their platform to speak. All right, thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.